Welcome to my complete t-shirt design workflow. I've been making and selling t-shirts for over 15 years now. Basically long enough to have made every mistake so you don't have to. Plus, since 2018, I've been running a t-shirt of the month subscription, which means I've had to design a brand new tee every single month for the past 7 years. That's a lot of shirts and a lot of caffeine. And now I'm here to share just about everything I know so you don't have to go through the same trials and tribulations I had to. I'll dive into the tools, devices, apps, and programs I use, how I set up my documents, the brushes and effects I use, how I finalize the design, and the crucial details you have to know to make your t-shirts killer instead of being an expensive dust rag. Hopefully this guide will answer some of the burning questions I get about my workflow, and more importantly, give you the know-how to turn your art into affordable, wearable, profitable garments. Because there's no better feeling than having a t-shirt you made become someone else's favorite t-shirt. All right, let's make some tees. Part 1, preparing. All right, it can be a great idea to go gather some information before you even make that very first little pencil mark on your design. Searching for a good garment printer and asking them questions early can save you from making major mistakes. Trust me, nothing stings worse than finishing an intricate design, celebrating your genius, and then realizing it's completely unusable because you didn't check the printing specs first. This video should help a lot with that, but your future t-shirt printer is the real MVP when it comes to specific printing details. And let me tell you, after working with about 5 or 6 different printing companies over the years, I can confirm they all do things a little bit differently. So, here are some questions you want to ask early. Number 1, find out the maximum printing size. If you're doing screen printing, you're working with actual physical screens, and those have size limits. I believe my current printers are 15 inches by 18 inches. I've had some printers that do 15 inches by 20 inches, but that extra size can incur oversized fees. Knowing the maximum print size of their screens lets you set up your document the correct size so you can make your art in the size of the printable area of the t-shirt. Number 2, ask them about the printing techniques available. So you've got this sort of umbrella term of screen printing. You know, this is great for big orders because the bulk prices can be cheaper than some other ways of printing. Screen printing is great because the shirts are durable and high quality compared to other methods. This method basically uses a stencil, aka a screen, to apply ink layer by layer onto the fabric. Each new color requires a new screen, so colors can be limited with this method. Underneath that umbrella of screen printing, you have some different methods. There's traditional plastisol printing. This is sort of the workhorse of the industry, bold, durable, and unapologetically thick. This is probably the cheapest screen printing option. It uses a thick PVC-based ink that sits on top of the fabric, and it can feel a little bit more heavy on the fabric and less breathable. Then you've got water-based inks. These are eco-friendly and soft, but they can be tricky on dark fabrics. They use water-soluble inks that soak into the fabric rather than sitting on top. They're gonna cost a little bit more than plastisol, and they're not as vibrant on dark fabrics without discharging agents. Which leads me to the next one, discharge printing. This one uses a water-based chemical to remove the dye from dark fabrics, replacing it with a new color. This is soft, breathable prints, even on dark fabrics. Once again, it's gonna be kind of moderate pricing, a little bit more than plastisol. And I guess the one drawback is that it doesn't really work on some fabrics, like it depends on the chemical makeup of the original fabric, I guess. But then outside of this umbrella of screen printing, if you're not looking to do screen printing, you have direct to garment printing, aka DTG. It uses a specialized inkjet printer that sprays ink directly onto the fabric. This is good for, you know, just small orders like a couple of t-shirts or full color designs. You can get high details and, you know, good colors with this, but I believe the production of these is slower when you're doing large amounts of them. From my experience, they're way less durable. It's gonna kind of deteriorate much more quickly than a silkscreen print. Then you have dye sublimation. This process uses heat to turn dye into gas, which bonds to polyester fabrics. This can be good for like all over prints, athletic wear. It's a bit higher in price. You can get seamless designs, vibrant colors, no cracking or peeling, but you can pretty much only do this on polyester or maybe some poly blend fabrics. And I personally do not like the super shiny shirt, silky, sticky feeling of those type of garments, but to each their own. Then you have heat transfers. colors. This uses heat and pressure to transfer a design onto the fabric. This is usually going to be pretty low cost, but it feels stiff, it's less durable, not a fan. And then you have embroidery. This technically isn't printing, but it's still pretty cool. This one's a bit more fancy and expensive. It is very durable and it's that kind of high-end look. But you're gonna get limited colors and details because they're using actual threads to make your design. I personally have been using discharge screen printing lately. I found an awesome t-shirt printer called PINE PRINTSHOP in Colorado because in my search for better and better quality, their discharge screen printing has produced some of the softest, non-plasticky feeling prints, and they're able to get insane details and color vibrancy when printing my design. I used to use traditional plastisol screen printing, but the soft feel that PINE delivers without losing any vibrancy or details makes the slightly higher cost worth it to me. I want my tees to look great and feel great. Okay, moving on. The number 3 thing you might want to ask them is what blank shirts do they offer? Not all t-shirts are created equal. Some feel amazing, some feel like wearing a Brillo pad. For screen printing, I find 100% cotton gets you the best colors when the inks are laid down, while stuff that has some polyester mixed in can achieve an ultra soft feel. Then when you're looking at blank t-shirt specs, you're gonna see things like fabric weights. Fabric weight for t-shirt is typically measured in ounces per square yard, or if you're from a country that's smart enough to use the metric system, it's gonna be grams per square meter. Here's how they're generally categorized. Lightweight t-shirts, the fabric weight is gonna be 3.5 ounces to 4.9 ounces. It's soft, breathable, drapes well, but it may be more transparent. Medium t-shirts are gonna be 5 ounces to 6 ounces. They balance durability and comfort. These are pretty standard for most t-shirts. And then you got heavyweight t-shirts, which are gonna be like 6.1 ounces to 7.5 ounces and up from there. They're thicker, durable, structured, holds their shape well. You can kind of think of the Carhartt workwear tee. Those ones are 6.7 ounces. You might also see the word singles listed on t-shirt specs. When you're talking about t-shirts, singles refers to the thread count or yarn size used in the fabric. It basically indicates how fine or coarse the cotton threads are. So the higher the singles number, the finer, softer, and smoother the fabric feels, and the lower the singles number, the thicker, rougher, and more durable the fabric is. Some common singles in t-shirts is going to be like 18 singles is more of a thick, rougher feel, often used on like cheap promo tees. 20 singles is going to be kind of like basic, mid-range, still a little rough, but better than 18. Then you get up closer to like 30 singles is going to be softer, smoother, a bit more premium. And then 40 plus singles is going to be like super soft, luxury feel. So some t-shirts I love for an affordable option, I used to go with the Anvil 980. They're 100% ring spun cotton, pre-shrunk, 4.5 ounce fabric. Anvil actually got bought out by Gildan a few years back, so this shirt is known as the Gildan Soft Style 980 now. A medium quality t-shirt that I like is the Next Level 3600. These are a bit higher quality with a lot of good color options, a nice fit, a soft feel. These are 4.3 ounce pre-shrunk, 100% ring spun cotton. They're another lightweight tee. They cost a little bit more than the Anvil 980, but they have a nicer fit and feel in my opinion. And then the t-shirts I've been printing on pretty much exclusively lately are a premium brand called AS Colors. This is their 5001 garment. These are midweight, 5.3 ounce, 100% combed cotton. These things have an awesome fit and the fabric just feels like so dang good. When you combine this t-shirt with the discharge printing, you get an absolutely amazing feeling and looking t-shirt. And even though the cost goes up with these, the quality does too. Okay, so then there's a bunch of other details you might want to ask about. For instance, ask them about bulk pricing. Some printers give price breaks based on 12 garments, so you order 12, 24, 48, 72, 144, 288, 576. The price goes down and down per garment whenever you hit these quantity milestones. Some other companies might do it based on tens or hundreds, 1000. So you get price breaks at like 50, 100, 200, and so on. Ask them about how many garments you need to order to get into that next reduced price bracket. You don't want to be the schlub who ordered 49 t-shirts and you could have got a better deal if you got 50. Next up, ask them about color matching. Will their art team be able to match their inks to your file? Do you need to provide Pantone colors so they can get color accuracy? Ask them about file type. We're gonna go over file setup in a bit here, but you can ask them, are Photoshop files okay? Do they need PDF? Do they need the art to be vector? Most of the printers that I've worked with can work with all the file types I just listed, as long as it's the correct size and DPI. And every printer I've worked with is fine with the color mode of your file being in RGB. They don't necessarily need you to convert it into CMYK with silkscreen printing, but it's a great idea to ask as many details about art files as possible. Major mistakes can be made here that can lead to you potentially remaking your whole dang artwork or getting crappy pixelated, low detail prints. Next up, ask them about the maximum amount of colors they can use. With screen printing, each color requires a new physical screen to be made. Many of these printers have like automated rotating machines that have screens preloaded onto them, and there's a limit of how many screens they can use simultaneously. Most places I've worked with top out at 8 to 10 colors, maybe 12, but as you're designing, you need to know that upper limit for your color palette. That being said, there are some other printing methods like CMYK process printing that uses just cyan, magenta, yellow, and black to simulate full colors. And then there's another version of that called simulated process printing that uses even more screens, up to 10 screens or more, to achieve the same kind of like full color vibe. Skilled printers can make this work, but I find that there is a high likelihood of the final artwork looking significantly different than the original design file you sent them. And then there's also DTG printing, which can achieve full color, but we've already talked about the drawbacks of direct-to-garment printing. And then you're gonna wanna find out about this, some extra costs that you might incur. Are there gonna be screen fees? They have to make the screen for each color. Many companies charge a fee to make the screen. Is there gonna be a white underbase fee? If you print on a dark garment, chances are good you're gonna need to lay down a layer of white as an underbase first so that the colors actually look like good and saturated. This involves another screen, it involves another step, and often involves another fee. Is there gonna be art prep or separation fees? Like when you send your art into the printer, they need to take your design and split it out into each individual color in the design. Plus, I'm sure there's some other little magic stuff that they're doing in the background that I don't even know about, but they have to like prepare your art to be printed. I always feel more confident leaving this step to the pros, especially with complex designs. There's things that they're thinking about, all the way down to like the thread count of their silk screens, and that is info that I just don't have, so I let them handle all the technical prep work. But just check and see if they're gonna charge you extra for that. You can ask them about color swapping. Like when I order tees, a lot of times I like to get half of them printed on one color garment and then the other half printed on another color garment. You can also ask them about like ink swaps. Instead of swapping the garment, you could swap the color of inks that they're actually printing on the garment. So maybe you have like a pink and green version of your shirt and you have another one that's like an orange and teal version of your shirt. That's a cool way to take one piece of art and almost have it be like two designs. And then you're gonna wanna ask them about turnaround time, shipping costs, and shipping time. How long is it gonna take to get your tees? What's the shipping cost gonna be? If you have a deadline like an event or a launch, make sure their timeline works for you. And then finally, one tiny little detail to remember is if you have your own business, you can provide them a sales tax license or a reseller's permit and get them to remove the tax from your order. You're buying these shirts with the intention of selling them on your own later. So with at least every state that I've ever lived in, I can just provide my reseller's permit and have the tax removed. So I know that was a lot, but getting all these details sorted out before you start designing will save you a ton of frustration. Printers can be your best friend or your worst nightmare, depending on how well you communicate with them. So go forth, ask the right questions, and let's make some killer tees. Okay, that is so much pre-production stuff to think about before you even start your design. Honestly, there's not one printing method or blank t-shirt or printer that's gonna be the best. It's about you and your design and what you wanna achieve. And speaking of my t-shirt business, the one thing that has had the biggest impact on my t-shirt business exploding is today's video sponsor, Squarespace. This is the original email that Squarespace sent me years ago, letting me know that they were announcing their subscription products. I got this email and said to myself, subscription products, eh? And that's when I started my t-shirt of the month subscription. Squarespace's e-commerce option allowed me to sell my t-shirts directly to my customers and made it so incredibly easy for me to build a beautiful website. Squarespace has award-winning templates where all you gotta do is drop your awesome content into their beautiful templates and boom, you got a website. With Squarespace payments, they also can take things like, the traditional credit cards and PayPal, but also Apple Pay, Afterpay, Klarna, and many, many more. They also have member exclusive areas. They let you schedule appointments, and they even have Squarespace Design Intelligence to help you design your website to be as beautiful as possible. So what are you waiting for? It's time for you to share your creative vision with the world, or build an epic online shop where you can sell your sweet t-shirts. Go to squarespace.com to start your free trial, and then when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/1000 for 10% off a website or domain. Thank you, Squarespace, for being a longtime sponsor of this channel, and thank you for helping me grow my t-shirt business. Okay, we've talked so much about the technical specs and details of t-shirt printing. Now let's actually design a t-shirt. Part 2, sketching. All right, now it's time to come up with our design. Sometimes I like to start my design session by just cruising around the internet and looking at a bunch of graphic tees. I'm seeing what's out there, absorbing some major vibes. I'm not looking for any specific tee to copy, but more just finding lots of little styles and elements I think are cool. Like I just randomly stumbled across this Christian t-shirt of all things and saw this wavy, warpy font I liked, and I thought, I've never done font like this before. Maybe I can play around with something like this. After my inspiration session to get my neurons flowing, I sit down at my iPad. The one I use is a 2021 M1 12.9-inch 5th generation iPad Pro. It has 256 gigabytes of storage, and I got it in space gray. At the time when I bought it, it was one generation older than the current generation at that time, and I got it refurbished on Amazon. Getting it that way saved me a few $100. I'm using the 2nd generation Apple Pencil. I have a paper-like screen protector on here, so my iPad feels a little bit better to draw on. And I use this little nifty digital art glove to help my hands slide across the iPad. Then I opened Procreate. Before I got started sketching in Procreate, I made sure my document settings were good. I set my canvas to 15 inches by 18 inches, which is the size of my screen printer screens. Then I made absolutely sure my DPI was set to 300. I think Procreate defaults to like 150 DPI, and that's not gonna cut it for things printed in the physical world. You gotta set this to 300 and save yourself future pain. Sometimes this is called PPI as well, which I think is pixels per inch. Other times it's called DPI, which I think is dots per inch. Some digital art guru can explain the difference between the two, but I just treat them as the same thing and just set them to 300 DPI or PPI, depending on what the art app says. I do my sketching in Procreate. You're gonna see later I finish it in Adobe Fresco, but the reason I still do all my sketching in Procreate is for one huge reason, and a couple of backup reasons too. The biggest reason I use Procreate for my sketch is my dog, Peppermint Pencil. Let's go, baby! You my boy! Peppermint Pencil! This stock pencil is straight up S tier. It's literally the very first built-in stock pencil in Procreate, but this thing feels better and behaves better and looks better than any digital pencil I've ever used. This thing is just so natural feeling to me. And when I'm brainstorming ideas, I want my digital pencil to look and feel kind of like the real thing. I've tried digital pencils in lots of other apps, and I just love this one the best. It feels so good. The second reason I like sketching in Procreate is how easy masking is in this app. You just select your layer, hit the mask button, grab like a round airbrush, and use the color black to non-destructively erase, or use the color white to bring it back and reveal what you had previously masked. I know every other app has some version of this, but Procreate makes it really quick and easy for my dumb artist brain to wrap my head around. Thirdly, when you draw a line in Procreate, then hold down your pencil for a couple seconds, it snaps into a perfectly straight line. And the same thing goes for circles and other shapes. Fresco also does the exact same thing, but again, somehow the feel of this feature in Procreate just like feels better to me. It's more natural. But honestly, you just gotta find what feels good for you, and there's tons of great tools and apps and programs out there. For this design, before I even jumped into Procreate, I actually started out by playing with some font and using Photoshop on my computer to create that warped text I was inspired by that other shirt. I clicked this Create Warped Text button, then set the style to twist, and mess with the bend settings until I found something I like. Then I rasterized the text, hit Command T to transform it, then selected Warp to keep shaping it until I found an interesting shape that I liked. I'm playing with the phrase make or break here. I thought to myself, hey, that's kind of my vibe as an artist. Let's just make something. Sometimes coming up with a phrase or a joke or a pun can help get your ideas flowing. Other times I can take something familiar and just mess around with it, like a s'more or a goat or ramen noodles. I like having that North Star of an idea as I make my t-shirt designs. And now that my sketch is in a place where I kind of like it, let's move on to the next phase of our design. Part 3, from sketch to design. The next app I'm going to use is Adobe Fresco for the inking. First, I need to export a plain old JPEG out of Procreate and import it into Fresco. I'll import my drawing with this photo icon right here, and then make a new layer and select the vector brush. The vector brush is the biggest reason I use this app. It's great to be able to ink with vector brushes. Instead of using raster graphics like Procreate, Fresco has the option to use vectors so that I can scale up my artwork as big as I want without it becoming pixelated or losing resolution. But unlike Adobe Illustrator, the vectors in here can just work with my Apple Pencil and have a hand-drawn kind of feel versus the clean, stark digital look that a lot of vectors end up with. Sometimes I'll even downscale my canvas in Fresco because I am working in vector. It doesn't really matter what size my canvas is since I can just upscale it later. I figure a smaller canvas equals easier processing for my iPad. If you're wondering why it looks like the lines are lagging behind my actual Apple Pencil, that's because I have the smoothing cranked all the way up to 100%. This is what causes a little bit of lag. Surprisingly, it doesn't bother me to draw this way at all. I don't even notice the lag. I think Fresco has some of the best line smoothing in the game, and I'm happy to trade off the super smooth lines in exchange for that tiny bit of lag. But if the lag bothers you, you can drop the smoothing down to like 90% or 80% or something like that, and it'll be just a lot more snappy. Your mileage may vary depending on what kind of iPad you're using. I'm assuming like less powerful iPads are gonna have more lag and vice versa. And then I've talked about this in other videos, but if you're new to Fresco, you may be wondering what this little circle on the corner of your screen is for. If you double tap it, it switches to an eraser that has the exact same brush settings as whatever current brush you're using. If you click the actual eraser icon, it's gonna have some other settings that are like directly connected to the eraser, but if you double tap the circle, the same settings you've been using just switch over to an eraser. And then if you triple tap this circle, this is freaking epic, man. You can draw your lines past where they intersect and then triple tap it, slice through the extra bits of line segments so that you can make like perfect corners and perfect joints where two lines meet. Freaking love this feature. When I am doing my vector inks, I try to be extra careful to close all the gaps between my lines. We're gonna do some vector fill colors in the next step, so closing the gaps of my line art will help me speed that process up a lot. And speaking of those flat colors, my inks are done, so let's move on to those. First, I'm gonna set my digital ink layer as a reference layer. Setting it as a reference means it will use this layer as a guide for my fill tool, even if I'm working on a separate layer. This makes it so that I can keep my line work and my fill colors separate while still having the lines be a guide for my coloring. So I'm gonna create a new layer, use this paint bucket tool, select a color I want, click down with my Apple Pencil in an area I want to fill. Fresco is going to pop up and ask me, hey, you want to do this as a vector color fill or a pixel color fill? I want vector. The rest of this step is pretty simple. I'm just going to keep selecting the colors I want and filling in the areas I want. When I'm selecting colors, I'm keeping in mind that every color I add is going to add cost to the garment. I find that for a lot of my designs, 7 colors is kind of a sweet spot for me. I choose a dark line color. That's one. Then I'll choose kind of like 2 main colors that I think go well together. Let's say I choose like pink and green. I'll do a dark green, a medium green, a light green, and then I'll do a dark pink, a medium pink, a light pink. And this is gonna let me do some shading while still keeping my colors pretty limited. Ultimately, the colors I choose right now while I'm inside of Fresco aren't too important because later when I bring this into Illustrator, I'm gonna play around with colors for quite a while till I find a color scheme I'm really happy with. And it's a lot easier and faster to kind of globally shift your colors in Illustrator versus Fresco. Right now, I'm just trying to stay limited and get slight vibe of my colors. To be honest, I don't even particularly like the colors I'm using right now inside of Fresco, but I know inside my head I'm gonna play with them later, so it's not that big a deal. So with my flat colors done, I'm gonna move on to shading. With my shading, I'm using those kind of same 6 colors and doing a hard shading style where I'm using flat colors in chunks to kind of get my shadows, midtones, and highlights. Very graphic style that I've fallen in love with. When it comes to shading, you can also play around with halftones when it comes to screen printing, so that they use those little dots to kind of simulate shadows. I've used this effect from time to time, but there is kind of a sweet spot with how small you can make these dots and have them show up well when screen printed. This could be another thing you ask your printers about. I find I get the best, most consistent, accurate results when I do these solid colors, and it's fun to kind of push the art as far as I can with those specific limitations in place. I love limitations when it comes to art. That's why designing t-shirts t-shirts is one of my favorite styles of art to do. I guess that's a good thing because with my t-shirt of the month subscription I offer on my website, I have to design a new t-shirt every single month, and that's been going for the past 7 years. It can be stressful sometimes getting the art done each month, but it really pushes me to keep making art. Plus, doing these t-shirts is pretty much the only art I make that I don't film. Being an art YouTuber, that can be a breath of fresh air to just make a design without having to film it. Anyway, I've taken this design as far as I can on my iPad. Now, let's move on to the next step to finalize my design. Part 4, finalizing the design. Okay, I want to bring this over to my computer to do some finishing touches. Normally I would use this export to Adobe Illustrator button, but lately this hasn't been working for me. Maybe because I have like 5 Apple computers, 2 iPads, and an iPhone, and Fresco doesn't know where to send it. I don't know, is anyone else having problems with this feature? Anyway, instead of that, I go to export and then export it as a PDF. This keeps the vectoriness of the file, and I can just airdrop that to my computer. I open that PDF in Adobe Illustrator on my desktop. I can start by scaling up the design if I need to. Since it's vector, I can make it as big as I want. Then I'm going to start getting my final colors. With the direct selection tool highlighted, I click on a color I want to mess with. Then I go to select, then same, then fill color. And this should select anywhere that color appears in my design. Now, all these blue selection lines can be distracting when making color decisions, so I hit Command H to hide them. If I need them back, I hit Command H again to reveal them. Then I go to Window and select Swatches. Then I hit these 3 lines up here and select Open Swatch Library, then Color Books, then Pantone Solid Coded. Now, in 2022, Adobe and Pantone allegedly had disagreements, and Adobe programs no longer include Pantones unless you subscribe to a service. So I have them, but you might not. But almost every printer I've ever worked with is pretty dang good at color matching just from the file that I send them. You can talk to your printer about this if you don't have access to Pantones. I like to do it for the most color accuracy, and if this design happens to ever become another piece of merch where the manufacturer actually does need Pantones, then they're already in place. But I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't have them. Anyway, I start changing my fill colors one by one, and this process can take quite some time as I try to balance my color scheme and just find something I love. Once that's done, I export it out of Illustrator as a Photoshop file to do the finishing touches. I know this makes the vector not become vector, but I still have that vector file saved on my hard drive, so if I ever need it as vector again, it's there. I bring it into Photoshop because I'm just like much more comfortable working in Photoshop than I am in Illustrator. But if you have a great understanding of Illustrator and you like working in that environment, then there's no reason to shoot it over to Photoshop. I can just work faster and better in Photoshop. So in Photoshop, I'm doing stuff like the final tweaks on font and just all the little final details. And then I open up my mockup file, and this particular mockup I actually just handmade myself by downloading every single image off of the AS Colors website for their 5001 Series T. I'll kind of just cycle through all the different t-shirt colors to see what my design looks like on top of each of them. When I find a good one, I'll just kind of save it as a JPEG and then maybe even lay them out in a grid next to each other and narrow it down. With this design, I wanted to print on a darker shirt, and that means I can actually remove one color. Instead of printing all the line work from the illustrations, I can just leave that unprinted and let the fabric show through to provide those dark lines. Eliminating the color is going to eliminate a screen, which is going to slightly reduce the cost. So if you can do it, do it. I'm going to go with a forest color tee for half the shirts, and then I'm going to print a coal color tee for the other half. And with that, I think it's time to order these things up. Part 5. Ordering. Alrighty, now that I have my t-shirt done, it's time to email my boy Patrick over at PINE PRINTSHOP. I deliver him the high-res Photoshop file so that he has my artwork, and then I send him a couple of JPEGs of the mock-ups I made just so he can kind of see the vibe I'm going for. I let him know when I need them by, in this case as close to March 1st as possible since this will be my t-shirt of the month for March. I tell him the print location, like, do I want to do the front of the tee, the back of the tee, maybe some specialty locations like sleeves. In this case, I want full front, maximum size. Then I tell him the ink colors I want by listing out my Pantones, or I could just say, hey, match my file if I didn't have the Pantones. I left him a little note that says, hey, the line art will be provided by the garment showing through underneath, don't print the lines. Then I list out the sizes I want in each color. With my fans, I sell the most in large and extra large, so I go heavy on those, and then I sell the least amount of like smalls and then 3XLs, so I go lightest on those. When you're ordering, you gotta be aware that 2XL and 3XL cost you more to order than sizes like small through extra large, because there's plus size fees when you order those blank garments. And boom, that's it. Once I send that email off, Patrick makes me a quote, breaks everything down. If I like it, I approve it, then I pay for the order, and Pine Print Shop gets started working their magic. Part 6. Printing. Okay, now it's time for Pine Print Shop to do their magic. And you know, Pine was nice enough to record a bunch of video for me of them making my shirts, but unfortunately there's no talking in any of the clips, so I'm gonna just do my best here to narrate this. But keep in mind, they're the professionals, so if I get any details wrong, just give me a little bit of leeway here. I might take some wild guesses. Okay, so it looks like they're making the screens for my project. This sweet little robot called a CTS prints wax onto the emulsion-covered screens, which are then exposed to UV light to cure the emulsion that's not covered by the wax. Then everything that is covered by the wax is uncured and is washed away right here at the rinsing station. And they're just gonna keep going color by color until all 6 screens are done. Now it looks like it's time for them to test the colors. Because they're using discharge ink, they start with light color tester t-shirts to register each color. Discharge ink uses a chemical process catalyzed by heat to remove the dye in the garment fabric and replace it with the pigment that they mix in. This makes for a soft, vibrant print. Okay, so it looks like they have a couple of test prints done and they're inspecting the colors and details. You can see they have their Pantones out to check how close they got to the original Pantones I provided them. Alright, it looks like they're happy with their test prints and they're ready to start the production run. They're gonna load the shirts onto this big printing machine, and each of the arms on this Dr. Octopus print robot has a separate screen with a separate color, and the machine puts the ink onto the tees. And I believe this is a drying machine where the inks are heat cured. Now they're moving on to the forest color tees to finish up my order. It takes a talented team of expert printers to deliver this kind of quality, and I'm so thankful that Pine Print Shop takes such good care with my orders. If you want to make some of your own custom apparel, I'll leave a link to Pine Print Shop down in the description. They're super chill folks over there, and their quality is like insane. Part 7. Fulfillment. Then the exciting day comes when the t-shirts arrive at my warehouse. The first thing that happens is my team opens them up and counts every single garment and inspects them. I've mentioned earlier that I've worked with like half a dozen t-shirt printers through the years, and some of them would send us significantly less t-shirts than what we ordered, or have like major mistakes, tears, ink spills, missing colors. Honestly, I think I've seen it all at this point. My current printer does a really good job at delivering good stuff, but we've just gotten in the habit of checking everything immediately. I figure if they're doing quality control at the printers, then we do another check here. That double check hopefully makes sure that everyone who orders from me will just get a great tee in their mailbox. If something is blemished or missing, it's good to be able to like email the manufacturer as quickly as possible after receiving the order to get the issue resolved. Once we've checked everything, my team gets to folding every garment. Most printers offer a folding service, a tagging service, a bagging service. Obviously all of those have extra fees, but I can have my team fold them, and in an effort to kind of reduce paper and plastic that just immediately gets thrown away, I skip the bagging and tagging for the most part. Surprisingly, I've never had a complaint about this. Then my team starts fulfilling the t-shirt of the month orders that we have. We put in a t-shirt, a new sticker that comes with each t-shirt every month, and a little thank you card just to let the customer know we appreciate their order. We seal up the poly bag, print out the shipping label, and stick it on the package. And then it gets picked up daily by our mail service. At that point, the customer gets an email that it's shipped and they can track their order, and then they get a surprise mystery shirt in the mail each month. For that 1 month, the tees are only available through the t-shirt of the month subscription at a discounted price, and then if there's leftovers at the end of the month, they hit the website that next month at full price for people who aren't subscribed. The number one feedback I get from my subscribers is how many compliments and like conversations get started from wearing these tees. That makes me feel really good, and I love to imagine my art going out into the world and being worn proudly as a part of someone else's personal fashion sense. And if these t-shirts are conversation starters, then my art is actually creating connections, and that's just so rad. Something I make in my studio doesn't get to travel that kind of road, but making t-shirts can make your art affordable, wearable, and accessible for people who couldn't afford an original painting. And t-shirts won't just live in someone's house forever like an art print would. And that's it. That's my complete t-shirt design workflow from start to finish. Now, I really wanted to have the completed t-shirt to hold up for you guys on camera right now, but UPS screwed me. I spent like $300 to have that next day aired to me, and they didn't next day air it to me. But that is gonna be the March t-shirt of the month, and if you guys wanna get your hands on that t-shirt, you can get signed up for my t-shirt of the month subscription over on 10hun.shop. And I'm doing something I've never done before. If you're signing up for the first time, I'm gonna do a special coupon code. This code right here, make or break 40. Enter that in and you get 40% off your first month of my t-shirt of the month subscription. The subscription is like over 25% cheaper than the regular price of my t-shirts. You get a free sticker each month and you get that mystery surprise in your mailbox. Super exciting. And even if you are subscribed to my t-shirt of the month subscription over on my previous site, we completely rebuilt the site so you could cancel your subscription over there, re-sign up on the new site, and get that 40% off as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you. I hope maybe I dropped some knowledge on you that you weren't aware of before. Huge thank you to PINE PRINTSHOP for making awesome tees for me and filming that footage of them making the shirts. It's always so cool to see the behind the scenes making of the product instead of just me designing it. Huge shout out to my patrons. You guys are the coolest people on the internet. Thank you so much. Patreon.com/10hun. T-shirts, baby. An epic canvas for your artwork. So fun. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm 1000. Peace out. I'll catch you on the next one.